The year was 2247, and humanity had finally reached beyond their home planet. Mars colonies were growing, and mining operations on Jupiter's moons were producing resources that Earth desperately needed. It was supposed to be the beginning of a peaceful expansion into the solar system. Nobody expected visitors from distant stars. Commander Jake Mitchell stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiance, watching the stars through the viewport. His ship was the pride of Earth's defense fleet, equipped with the best technology humanity could build. It wasn't much compared to what science fiction had promised, but it was theirs. Jake had served in the Earth Defense Fleet for 15 years, working his way up from a fighter pilot to commanding the flagship. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and a calm presence that made his crew trust him even in dangerous situations. The alarm shattered the peaceful moment. Red lights flashed across every console on the bridge. Lieutenant Kate Morrison looked up from her station, her face pale. She had been monitoring deep space sensors, a usually boring job that involved watching empty space for hours. "Commander, we have multiple contacts emerging near the moon," Kate said, her voice shaking slightly. "They just appeared out of nowhere. No warning, no signals. The signatures don't match anything in our database." Jake moved quickly to her station. The screen showed dozens of massive objects materializing in space around Earth's moon. They were huge, much larger than any ship humanity had ever built. The largest one was the size of a small city. Sound battle stations. "Get Admiral Crawford on the line immediately," Jake ordered. "And somebody tell me what we're looking at." Within minutes, every military installation on Earth and in orbit went to high alert. Fighters scrambled from lunar bases. Defense satellites activated their weapons systems. The United Earth Space Command headquarters became a storm of activity as officers tried to understand what was happening. Admiral Lisa Crawford appeared on the main screen. She was a veteran commander in her 50s, known for her sharp mind and decisive actions. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her expression showed no fear, only focus. "Jake, what's the situation?" she asked. "Unknown vessels, Admiral. At least 50 large ships. They're not moving, just holding position near the moon. We've sent standard greeting messages in every language we know, including mathematical sequences." "No response yet," Lisa nodded. "Hold your position, but stay ready. Whatever they are, they came here for a reason. We'll know soon enough what they want." The answer came 30 minutes later. A signal cut through every communication channel on Earth. Every television, radio, computer, and military comm system received the same message. The voice that spoke was translated into perfect English, though it carried a strange metallic quality. "Primitive species of the third planet. We are the Zarkathi Dominion. Your system now falls under our authority. You will submit to Dominion rule within 48 Earth hours. Prepare to receive our terms and administrators. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your population centers. This is your only warning." The message ended. Silence filled the bridge of the Defiance. Jake looked at his crew and saw the same shock and anger on every face. Kate gripped her console so hard, her knuckles turned white. Lieutenant Dan Cooper, the communications officer, just stared at his screen in disbelief. "Did they just threaten to destroy Earth?" Dan asked quietly. "Yes," Jake replied. "They did." Within the hour, Admiral Crawford had assembled an emergency council at Earth Command. Jake attended via video link from the Defiance, along with every major military commander and world leader. The room was chaos. Politicians argued about negotiation. Some wanted to surrender immediately, to save lives. Others demanded they fight. Colonel Ryan Bennett, head of ground forces, slammed his fist on the table. He was a stocky man, with a scarred face from combat in the Mars border conflicts 5 years ago. "We can't just give up our planet to these aliens. We don't know anything about them, or what they'll do to us. We also don't know if we can fight them," argued one of the civilian counselors. "Look at their ships. They're enormous. Our weapons might not even scratch them." "9 9. I. 9. Captain Amy Sullivan joined the discussion from her ship, the ESS Resolute. She commanded one of Earth's 12 capital ships. Her voice was firm. "We need information. How did they find us? Why do they want Earth? What happens to conquered species in their empire?" Jake spoke up. "They called us primitive. They think we're easy targets. That gives us one advantage. They're underestimating us." Admiral Crawford raised her hand, and the room fell silent. Everyone respected her judgment. She had commanded forces in 3 major conflicts and never lost her cool under pressure. "We have 48 hours," Lisa said calmly. "We're not surrendering Earth without knowing what we're facing. Jake, take your ship and 2 others. Try to establish communication with those vessels. Learn whatever you can. Ryan, prepare ground forces for worst-case scenarios. Amy, position the fleet in defensive formations around Earth. Everyone else, I want options. Find me ways we can hurt those ships if it comes to fighting." The council dispersed. Jake returned his attention to the enemy fleet, hanging in space near the moon. They hadn't moved since arriving. They were waiting, confident that humanity would simply accept their fate. The Zarkathi had probably done this hundreds of times before, threatening primitive species into submission. But humans had something those aliens might not expect. Throughout their entire history, humans had fought against impossible odds. They had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and environmental disasters. They had split the atom, touched the moon, and built cities in the hostile environment of Mars. Humanity's greatest trait wasn't their technology or their strength. It was their stubborn refusal to give up. The 48 hours passed too quickly. Jake Mitchell barely slept during that time. His crew worked constantly, scanning the Zarkathi fleet, trying to find weaknesses. What they discovered wasn't encouraging. The alien ships had powerful energy shields, weapons that could vaporize a human vessel in seconds, and armor plating that was incredibly dense. Earth's missiles and railguns might damage them, but it would take concentrated fire from multiple ships to bring down even one enemy vessel. The Zarkathi deadline arrived. Admiral Crawford sent a final message to the alien fleet. Her words were simple and direct. "Earth declines your terms. We will defend our home." The response was immediate. The Zarkathi fleet began moving toward Earth. Their formation was perfect. Ships arranged in precise geometric patterns. They moved like a machine, coordinated and efficient. Jake watched them approach on his tactical display and felt a cold weight in his stomach. This was really happening. "All ships, battle stations." Admiral Crawford's voice came through the fleet channel. "Engage at will. Make every shot count. For Earth." The ESS Defiance moved forward with 11 other capital ships. Behind them came 40 smaller cruisers and over 200 fighters. It looked impressive until Jake compared it to the enemy force. 50 massive Zarkathi warships, each one larger than Earth's biggest vessel, came toward them like an avalanche. The battle began at a distance of 10,000 kilometers. The Zarkathi opened fire first. Beams of crimson energy lanced through space, striking Earth's orbital defense platforms. Jake watched in horror as 3 platforms exploded in seconds, becoming clouds of debris and fire. Hundreds of crew members died in those first moments. "Return fire," Jake commanded. "Target the lead ship. All weapons." The Defiance shook as its railguns fired, sending depleted uranium rounds toward the enemy at incredible speeds. Missiles followed, dozens of them streaking through space. The other Earth ships did the same, focusing their fire on a single Zarkathi cruiser. The enemy shields flared bright blue as the projectiles hit. The shields held, absorbing most of the damage. But Jake noticed something important. The shields flickered slightly after the heaviest impacts. They could be overwhelmed with enough firepower. "Keep firing," he shouted. "Don't stop. Hit them with everything." The battle became chaos. Zarkathi beams cut through space, destroying Earth ships with terrifying efficiency. The ESS Guardian exploded after taking a direct hit to its reactor. The ESS Horizon tried to retreat but was caught by 3 enemy ships and torn apart by concentrated fire. Human fighters swarmed around the larger ships, trying to draw fire and target weak points. Captain Amy Sullivan commanded the ESS Resolute. Her ship was taking heavy damage. Warning lights flashed across her bridge, and smoke filled the air from burning electronics. Her tactical officer was dead, killed when an explosion tore through his station. Half her crew was injured or worse. "Captain, shields at 15%, her navigator called out. "We can't take another hit like that." Amy looked at the tactical display. Her ship was dying, but there was still one thing she could do. A Zarkathi cruiser was directly ahead, its shields damaged from fighter attacks. If she could ram it at full speed, the kinetic impact might destroy them both. "Set collision course," Amy ordered calmly. "Full power to engines. Everyone to escape pods. You have 2 minutes. I have do not maybe. Emmy, number Vi." Her remaining crew stared at her. "Captain, you need to evacuate too," her navigator said. Amy smiled sadly. "Somebody has to keep the ship on course. Go." "That's an order." The crew reluctantly abandoned the bridge. Amy strapped herself into the captain's chair and pushed the engines to maximum. The Resolute accelerated toward the enemy ship. The Zarkathi realized what was happening and tried to move, but they were too slow. The human ship struck them at tremendous speed. The impact was devastating. Both vessels exploded in a massive fireball visible from Earth. Amy Sullivan died instantly, but she took 300 enemy soldiers with her. It was the first Zarkathi ship destroyed in the battle. On Mars, the situation was equally desperate. Lieutenant Ben Carter commanded a Marine unit defending the main colony dome. Zarkathi drop pods had landed an hour ago, and alien soldiers were advancing through the red dust. The enemy troops wore advanced battle armor and carried energy weapons that cut through cover like paper. Ben's unit had standard kinetic rifles and limited ammunition. They were outnumbered 5-1. But Ben had grown up on Mars. He knew the terrain better than any alien invader could. "Fall back to the canyon network," he ordered his squad. "Use the dust storms for cover. Make them chase us into narrow spaces where their numbers don't matter." The Marines retreated in good order, firing as they went. The Zarkathi followed confidently. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and fought thousands of battles. These human soldiers would break and run, just like all the others. But when the aliens entered the narrow canyons, they found themselves in a nightmare. The Marines had planted explosives on the canyon walls. When the first Zarkathi units passed through, Ben triggered the charges. Tons of rock came crashing down, crushing the enemy soldiers. Those who survived found themselves separated and surrounded. Ben's Marines attacked from above, firing down from hidden positions. The Zarkathi energy shields weren't designed for attacks from multiple angles in close quarters. Human bullets found gaps in their armor. One by one, the alien soldiers fell. It was brutal, dirty fighting. Nothing honorable or clean about it. But it worked. The Zarkathi unit retreated in confusion, leaving their dead behind. It was the first time in Dominion history that one of their ground forces had been forced to withdraw. Back in space, Jake Mitchell watched the battle unfold. Earth was losing. They had destroyed 3 enemy ships at the cost of 7 human vessels and countless fighters. The orbital defenses were mostly destroyed. The Zarkathi were pushing toward Earth itself. But something was changing. The enemy formation wasn't as tight anymore. Their movements showed slight hesitation. They had expected an easy victory, a quick surrender after a show of force. Instead, they were facing opponents who rammed ships into them, who used suicide tactics, who refused to quit even when dying. Major Nicole Hayes led a fighter squadron in a desperate attack on a Zarkathi command ship. Her squadron was down to 8 fighters from the original 20. They dodged through enemy fire, losing 2 more before reaching their target. All wings, target the communications array, Nicole commanded. Hit it with everything we have left. The fighters unleashed their remaining missiles at point-blank range. The Zarkathi point defense systems shot down most of them, but 3 missiles got through. They struck the communications array, tearing it apart in a series of explosions. The command ship was suddenly cut off from the rest of the fleet. The other Zarkathi vessels continued fighting, but lost coordination. It was a small victory, but it mattered. 2 weeks into the war, Earth's defenders had learned to adapt. The Zarkathi still held advantages in technology and firepower, but humans were proving to be quick learners. Every destroyed enemy ship became a classroom. Every battle taught new lessons about alien tactics and weaknesses. Engineer Chris Palmer worked in a hidden facility deep underground in Colorado. Before him lay pieces of a destroyed Zarkathi fighter, recovered from the lunar surface. Chris was a civilian contractor who had designed engine systems for commercial spacecraft. Now, he was humanity's best hope for understanding alien technology. Dr. Laura Bennett worked beside him. She was a physicist who had been studying theoretical energy systems when the war started. Together, they had been given an impossible task: figure out how the Zarkathi shields worked and find a way to defeat them. Chris carefully examined a piece of the alien shield generator. It was unlike anything he had seen before. The technology seemed to operate on principles that human science hadn't fully developed yet, but the basic concept was understandable. The shields created a field that dispersed energy and kinetic impacts across their entire surface. "Look at this," Laura said, pointing to her computer screen. "It cycles through 7 different frequencies in sequence, probably to defend against different types of weapons." Chris leaned closer. "What happens between the shifts? There must be a moment when it's vulnerable." Laura ran calculations. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "Yes. 0.03 seconds. That's the gap when the shield switches from one frequency to the next. That's barely any time at all," Chris said. "Our weapons can't fire fast enough to exploit that window." "Not yet," Laura replied with a tired smile. "But give me a few days. I think I can modify our targeting computers to detect the frequency shift and fire at exactly the right moment." They worked for 72 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination. When they finally had a prototype, they sent it to Admiral Crawford with a simple message: "This might work. Test it immediately." Commander Jake Mitchell received the updated targeting software on the Defiance. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Megan Brooks, installed it into their systems. Megan was young, but brilliant with computers. She had graduated top of her class at the military academy. "Systems ready, Commander," Megan reported. "If Dr. Bennett's calculations are correct, we should be able to punch through their shields with normal weapons." "If her calculations are correct," Jake repeated. "Only one way to find out. Prepare to engage the next enemy patrol we encounter." The opportunity came 6 hours later. A Zarkathi cruiser was moving through the asteroid belt, probably searching for human hiding spots. Jake ordered the Defiance to intercept. "Target locked," Megan said, watching her displays carefully. "Waiting for the frequency shift." "There." Firing. The Defiance's railgun fired a single shot. The projectile struck the enemy ship's shield at the exact moment it was vulnerable. The shield failed to stop it. The round punched through and hit the ship's hull, tearing a hole in its armor. The Zarkathi cruiser immediately changed course, retreating quickly. Its crew had just experienced something new: a human weapon that could penetrate their defenses. "It works," Jake said quietly. "Get that software to every ship in the fleet, now." Within 24 hours, every human vessel had the updated targeting system. The balance of the war began to shift. Earth's ships could now hurt their enemies more effectively. It wasn't a guarantee of victory, but it gave them a fighting chance. Meanwhile, Jake planned something bold. The Zarkathi command ship, the largest vessel in their fleet, coordinated all enemy operations. If that ship could be disabled or destroyed, the entire enemy fleet would fall into chaos. He assembled a strike team for a boarding mission. It was incredibly dangerous, almost suicidal. But if it worked, it could change everything. Lieutenant Kate Morrison volunteered immediately. So did Sergeant Alex Turner, a combat veteran who had fought in every engagement so far. "We'll use a captured Zarkathi shuttle," Jake explained to his team. "The civilian hacker Sam Rodriguez has created false identification codes for us. We'll approach the command ship pretending to be a damaged alien vessel, requesting emergency docking." Sam Rodriguez was only 23 years old. Before the war, he had been arrested twice for hacking into corporate systems. Now he was using those skills to save Earth. He sat at a computer in the Defiance's operations center, surrounded by code and alien data. "The codes should work," Sam said nervously. "I've tested them against every Zarkathi signal we've intercepted. But if they've changed their security protocols, we'll be detected immediately." "We'll take that chance," Jake replied. The strike team prepared for the mission. They wore captured Zarkathi armor, modified to fit human bodies. The helmets were uncomfortable, and the armor was heavy, but it would let them blend in if they weren't examined too closely. The captured shuttle launched from the Defiance and approached the massive command ship. Jake sat in the pilot's seat, his hands sweating inside the alien gloves. This was either going to work brilliantly or end with all of them dead in the next few minutes. "Identification codes transmitted," Kate reported. Seconds felt like hours. Then, a signal came back in the Zarkathi language. Sam had provided translations. It said, "Dock at Bay 7. Emergency crew standing by." They were in. The shuttle landed in the enemy docking bay. Jake and his team exited carefully, trying to walk like the Zarkathi did. The aliens were taller than humans and moved differently. It was hard to mimic their gait convincingly. Zarkathi crew members moved around the bay, but they were focused on their own tasks. Nobody paid attention to what they thought was another alien crew. The strike team moved quickly toward the ship's computer core. Sam had given them directions based on the layout of smaller Zarkathi vessels. They encountered their first problem at a security checkpoint. A Zarkathi guard stood watching the corridor. There was no way past without being seen. Sergeant Turner made a quick decision. He walked up to the guard and struck him hard across the head with his weapon. The alien dropped without making a sound. They dragged the unconscious body into a side room. "We need to move faster," Turner whispered. "That guard will be missed soon." The team ran through the corridors, no longer pretending to be aliens. They reached the computer core and found it protected by more guards. A firefight erupted. Human and Zarkathi weapons lit up the corridor. Kate shot 2 guards while taking cover behind a bulkhead. Turner charged forward, using his combat training to close the distance and take down another alien in hand-to-hand combat. Jake provided covering fire, his weapon cutting down a guard who was trying to raise an alarm. They secured the computer core. Sam had given Jake a data device containing a virus. It wasn't designed to destroy the Zarkathi systems. Instead, it would feed them false information, making human ships appear in multiple locations at once. Jake plugged the device into the alien computer. The virus began uploading. It would take 3 minutes to fully integrate into the system. Those 3 minutes were the longest of Jake's life. Alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The Zarkathi crew realized they had intruders. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor. The virus worked better than anyone had hoped. Within hours of infection, the Zarkathi command network began reporting false sensor data to their entire fleet. Human ships appeared on their scanners in 3 or 4 different locations simultaneously. Enemy targeting systems couldn't determine which signals were real. Missiles flew toward phantom ships, while actual human vessels struck from unexpected angles. The Zarkathi Supreme Commander, Velthar, watched in frustration as his fleet stumbled into confusion. He was an experienced military leader who had conquered 20 star systems personally. Never in his long career had he encountered an enemy so devious. These humans fought without honor, using tricks and deception instead of proper military tactics. Velthar called for more reinforcements. The Dominion Council questioned his request. Why did he need additional ships to conquer a single primitive planet? His answers were vague. The truth was embarrassing. Humans were proving far more difficult than anticipated. On Earth, Colonel Ryan Bennett organized civilian resistance in every major city. The Zarkathi had landed ground forces in populated areas, expecting quick surrender. Instead, they found themselves fighting in urban environments where their technological advantages meant less. In London, civilians, armed with improvised weapons, attacked Zarkathi patrols from buildings and sewers. In Beijing, resistance fighters used ancient tunnel systems to move unseen beneath the city. In New York, someone had figured out how to hack the alien communication systems, broadcasting false orders that sent enemy units into ambushes. Ryan coordinated these efforts from a mobile command center that moved constantly to avoid detection. He had learned an important lesson in the first week. Humans didn't need to win traditional battles. They just needed to make occupation impossible. Every street should be a trap, Ryan told his commanders in a video conference. Every building should be a fortress. Make them afraid to leave their ships. Make them spend resources protecting themselves instead of attacking us. The strategy worked. Zarkathi ground forces became cautious, moving slowly and checking everything. Their advance stalled. Units that had expected to control entire cities in days instead found themselves fighting for individual blocks after weeks. In space, Admiral Lisa Crawford prepared her biggest surprise. Deep in the shipyards of Jupiter's moon Ganymede, human engineers had been building something special. They had worked in secret for years before the war, constructing a massive warship that pushed Earth's technology to its absolute limits. The ESS Vengeance was twice the size of any previous human vessel. It incorporated every lesson learned from fighting the Zarkathi. Its armor was designed to resist energy weapons. Its shields, based on reverse-engineered alien technology, were the most powerful ever created by humans. Its weapons included experimental railguns that could fire projectiles at near-light speed. Captain Matt Phillips commanded the Vengeance. He was a veteran officer who had lost his previous ship in the war's first week. Most of his original crew had died. Now, he had a chance for revenge. All systems ready, Admiral, Matt reported to Lisa Crawford. The Vengeance is ready for combat, Lisa smiled grimly. Then let's introduce our guests to humanity's newest achievement. Take your ship to Earth orbit. It's time to remind the Zarkathi that they're not the only ones who can build warships. The Vengeance emerged from behind Jupiter, its engines blazing. The journey to Earth took 2 days. When it arrived, the Zarkathi fleet detected it immediately. They saw a large human vessel, bigger than their previous ships, but still smaller than their own cruisers. It didn't seem threatening. They learned the truth quickly. The Vengeance engaged 3 Zarkathi ships at once. Its weapons fired with devastating accuracy. The first enemy cruiser's shields collapsed under the bombardment. The second took critical damage to its engines. The third tried to retreat, but was caught by a salvo that tore through its hull. In minutes, 3 Zarkathi vessels were destroyed or disabled. The remaining enemy fleet pulled back in shock. One human ship had done what previously required their entire fleet. The balance of power had shifted dramatically. Jake Mitchell watched the Vengeance's performance from the Defiance with a mixture of awe and relief. Finally, humanity had a weapon that could match the enemy ship to ship. They weren't helpless anymore. All fleet units, advance, Admiral Crawford ordered. Coordinate with the Vengeance. Hit them with everything we have. Today we take back our orbital space. The human fleet moved forward together. Ships that had been hiding and running for weeks now attacked aggressively. The Zarkathi, confused by the virus in their systems and shocked by the Vengeance's power, fell back in disarray. Lieutenant Megan Brooks commanded the Vengeance's weapons systems. She had been transferred from the Defiance specifically for this role. Her hands moved confidently across her controls, targeting enemy vessels with precision. Every shot counted, and she made sure none were wasted. "Target the command ship," Captain Phillips ordered. "If we can take it down, their coordination will collapse completely." The Vengeance turned toward the massive Zarkathi flagship. It was a bold move. The command ship was heavily defended and protected by a dozen escort vessels. But Phillips had faith in his ship and crew. The battle was intense. Energy beams and missiles filled the space between the ships. The Vengeance's shields held against the initial assault. Its point defense systems shot down incoming missiles. Its heavy railguns pounded the enemy escorts, forcing them to scatter. Jake brought the Defiance in to support the Vengeance's attack. Other human ships followed. It became a coordinated assault on the heart of the enemy fleet. The Zarkathi fought desperately to protect their command ship. On Mars, Ben Carter and his Marines launched their own offensive. Intelligence had located the main Zarkathi base on the planet's surface. Ben led a strike force of 200 soldiers in a daring raid. They approached at night, using the natural dust storms for cover. The alien base was protected by defensive turrets and shield barriers. Ben's team had brought captured Zarkathi weapons and equipment. They knew the enemy codes thanks to Sam Rodriguez's hacking efforts. "Remember," Ben told his troops before the attack, "we don't need to destroy the base. We just need to make them think we can. Spread out. Cause chaos. Make lots of noise. Hit their supply depot and their communications array. Make them scared." The Marines struck from multiple directions simultaneously. Explosions ripped through the base. Zarkathi soldiers rushed to defensive positions, but they couldn't tell how many attackers there were. The darkness and dust made visibility terrible. Every shadow seemed to hide enemies. Ben's team destroyed the communications array with planted explosives. The supply depot went up in a massive fireball. Then the Marines retreated before the enemy could organize a proper response. They left behind confusion and fear. The Zarkathi garrison sent a distress signal, reporting they were under attack by a large human force. In reality, only 200 Marines had attacked them, but the enemy believed they faced thousands. More Zarkathi troops were diverted to Mars, weakening their forces elsewhere. Back in Earth orbit, the battle reached its climax. The Vengeance had broken through the enemy escorts and was now engaging the command ship directly. Its massive railguns hammered at the flagship's shields. Each impact made the shields flicker and weaken. Velthar stood on his command bridge, watching the human ship attack him. This shouldn't be possible. These primitives shouldn't have vessels capable of threatening him, yet here they were, battering his shields, refusing to retreat even when outgunned. "All ships, protect the flagship," Velthar commanded. "Destroy that human vessel, at any cost." But the order came too late. The Vengeance's concentrated fire finally overwhelmed the command ship's shields. A railgun round penetrated the hull, tearing through multiple decks. The flagship was severely damaged but not destroyed. Velthar made a difficult decision. "Retreat. All ships, retreat to the Outer Supreme Commander." Velthar returned to the Zarkathi Dominion's core worlds in disgrace. The Council demanded explanations for his failure. How had a primitive species resisted the might of the Dominion? Velthar's pride wouldn't allow him to admit the truth, that humans were more clever, more adaptable, and more determined than any species the Dominion had encountered before. Instead, he requested the Grand Armada. 200 warships, drawn from a dozen conquered systems. It was a fleet meant for major campaigns against powerful civilizations. Using it against Earth seemed excessive, but Velthar insisted. The Council approved, mostly because they wanted the embarrassing situation resolved quickly. On Earth, humanity had 3 months to prepare, while the Zarkathi assembled their massive fleet. Admiral Lisa Crawford used every moment. The Vengeance was repaired and upgraded. 2 more ships of its class were rushed through construction, though they wouldn't be as advanced as the original. Every orbital station was rebuilt as a fortress. The Moon became a weapons platform bristling with railguns and missile batteries. Dr. Laura Bennett continued her research into Zarkathi technology. She had made another breakthrough, a way to track enemy ships through hyperspace. By analyzing the energy signatures they left behind, she could predict where and when reinforcements would arrive. "They'll come from 3 different directions," Laura explained to the military commanders. "Their fleet is too large to travel together, so they're splitting into battle groups. We can use this. Instead of facing 200 ships at once, we face them in smaller groups." Jake Mitchell studied the data. "If we position our forces correctly, we can hit each group as it arrives. Hit them hard before they can coordinate with the others," Colonel Ryan Bennett added. "And while they're focused on space combat, our ground forces can strike their supply bases. They'll need those bases to sustain a long campaign. Without supplies, even a large fleet becomes vulnerable." The strategy was risky but necessary. Earth couldn't win a straight fight against 200 enemy warships. They needed to divide the enemy and defeat them, piece by piece. Sam Rodriguez had been working on another virus, more sophisticated than the first. This one wouldn't just confuse enemy sensors. It would make their weapons targeting systems unreliable, causing them to miss shots or even fire on their own ships if they weren't careful. "I need someone to plant this directly into their fleet network," Sam explained. "It won't spread on its own like the last virus. We need physical access to one of their ships." "I'll do it," Jake volunteered immediately. "I've boarded enemy ships before. My team knows the drill." The first Zarkathi battle group arrived 3 weeks later. 70 warships emerged from hyperspace near Mars. They expected to find human forces scattered and weak. Instead, they found a trap. The ESS Vengeance and 20 other human ships were waiting in the asteroid belt, hidden among the rocks. As soon as the enemy fleet began moving toward Mars, they attacked from behind. The Zarkathi were caught by surprise, forced to turn and face an unexpected assault. At the same moment, human forces on Mars launched attacks on Zarkathi ground installations. Ben Carter led his Marines in a coordinated strike that destroyed 3 enemy bases in one night. The Zarkathi fleet commander had to divert ships to provide orbital support, splitting his forces. The battle lasted for hours. Human ships used the asteroids for cover, appearing and disappearing from enemy sensors. Every time the Zarkathi tried to form a coordinated attack, human vessels struck from a different angle. It was chaotic, messy fighting that humans excelled at. Captain Matt Phillips pushed the Vengeance hard, engaging enemy capital ships directly. His vessel took heavy damage, but gave as good as it got. Lieutenant Megan Brooks worked her weapon systems perfectly, each shot calculated for maximum effect. "Target their flagship," Matt ordered. "If we can disable their command structure, the rest will fall apart." The Vengeance drove straight at the enemy flagship, shields blazing. Other human ships followed in its wake. It was a bold, reckless maneuver that the Zarkathi didn't expect. Their commander tried to retreat, but it was too late. Human missiles and railgun fire overwhelmed the flagship's defenses. The ship didn't explode, but it was knocked out of the fight. Its engines damaged, its weapons offline. It drifted helplessly in space. Without their flagship, the Zarkathi battle group lost cohesion. Individual ships fought well, but they had no overall strategy. Human forces exploited this, picking off isolated vessels, one by one. By the time the battle ended, the Zarkathi had lost 20 ships. The remaining 50 retreated to regroup. Humanity had won the first engagement against the Grand Armada, but there was no time to celebrate. Intelligence reported that the second Zarkathi battle group, 60 ships strong, was approaching Earth directly. Admiral Crawford positioned the fleet for another desperate defense. Jake Mitchell led his strike team on a dangerous mission. They approached one of the retreating Zarkathi vessels in a captured shuttle, using Sam's false identification codes. This time they weren't trying to reach the computer core. They just needed to plant the virus in any terminal they could access. The mission went smoothly until they were leaving. A Zarkathi officer noticed something wrong with their armor. He raised an alarm. Jake's team had to fight their way out, engaging in a running gun battle through the ship's corridors. Lieutenant Kate Morrison was shot in the leg, but kept moving. Sergeant Turner, recovered from his previous injuries, provided covering fire as they retreated. They reached their shuttle with enemy soldiers close behind. "Go, go, go!" Jake shouted as the shuttle launched. Zarkathi fighters pursued them, but friendly human ships provided cover. The team escaped, and Sam's virus was successfully planted. The virus spread through the Zarkathi fleet network quickly. When the second battle group engaged human forces near Earth, their weapons systems began malfunctioning. Shots that should have hit human ships instead missed by large margins. In some cases, Zarkathi ships accidentally fired on each other. The confusion was devastating. The enemy fleet fell into chaos. Human defenders pressed their advantage ruthlessly. Every mistake the Zarkathi made was exploited. Every moment of confusion was used to strike hard. Captain Kelly Barnes commanded a squadron of civilian volunteers flying converted cargo ships. These vessels had been loaded with explosives and turned into makeshift bombs. It was a one-way mission, but everyone had volunteered. "For Earth," Kelly said simply, as her squadron accelerated toward the enemy formation. The cargo ships punched through the Zarkathi defensive line. Most were destroyed before reaching their targets, but 6 made it through. The explosions tore massive holes in the enemy formation, allowing human warships to advance. Kelly's ship was one that didn't make it. She died in the explosion, but her sacrifice allowed 3 human cruisers to break through and destroy a Zarkathi command ship. The second battle group was defeated, though at terrible cost. Earth had lost 15 ships and hundreds of fighters. Thousands of soldiers and crew members were dead, but the Zarkathi had lost 40 ships, and their remaining vessels were retreating. The third and final battle group arrived 2 days later. These were the most experienced Zarkathi commanders, leading 70 of their best ships. They had learned from the previous defeats. They were cautious, methodical, and coordinated. The final battle took place in Earth orbit. Every human ship that could still fight was there. Every orbital platform, every moon base, every defense satellite contributed to the fight. Captain Matt Phillips wanted to argue, but deep down he knew Megan was right. The ship needed a commander elsewhere in the battle. He gripped her shoulder briefly, a gesture of respect and farewell, then headed to the escape pods with the rest of the crew. Megan Brooks sat alone on the bridge of the dying Vengeance. Warning lights flashed all around her. The ship groaned as its structure buckled under damage. She worked quickly at the engineering console, overriding safety protocols and pushing the reactor beyond its limits. "Come on," she whispered to the ship. "One last fight. Make it count." The reactor temperature climbed rapidly. Critical warnings screamed at her from every display. The Zarkathi ships surrounding the Vengeance were still firing, unaware of what she was doing. They thought they were simply finishing off a disabled vessel. When the reactor reached critical mass, Megan closed her eyes and thought of home. She thought of Earth, hanging beautiful and blue in the darkness of space. She thought of her family, her friends, everyone she was fighting to protect. The Vengeance exploded with the force of a small star. The blast wave caught 6 Zarkathi ships at close range, destroying them instantly. 3 more were heavily damaged and forced to retreat. In her final act, Megan had taken out nearly a tenth of the enemy battle group. Admiral Lisa Crawford watched from the command center as the Vengeance vanished in a brilliant flash. She felt the loss deeply. That ship had been humanity's greatest achievement, and now it was gone. But its sacrifice had bought them precious time and destroyed multiple enemy vessels. "All ships, press the attack," Lisa ordered. "Don't let Lieutenant Brooks's sacrifice be in vain. Hit them with everything we have left." Well, the human fleet surged forward. Ships that were damaged beyond normal fighting capacity stayed in the battle. Crews that should have retreated kept fighting. Nobody wanted to quit. Jake Mitchell commanded the Defiance in the thickest part of the fighting. His ship was scarred and battered, held together by emergency repairs and the determination of its crew. Lieutenant Kate Morrison, despite her injured leg, remained at her post coordinating defensive systems. The bridge smelled of smoke and ozone. "Commander, we have 3 enemy cruisers approaching from starboard," Kate reported. "Shields are at 20%. We can't take much more." Jake studied the tactical display. The battle was reaching its climax. Both sides were exhausted, running low on ammunition and power. It would come down to who could endure just a little bit longer. "All power to engines," Jake commanded. "We're going to ram the lead cruiser. If we're going down, we're taking them with us." Before he could execute the maneuver, something unexpected happened. The Zarkathi fleet began receiving transmissions from their home territory. The signals were garbled and panicked. Sam Rodriguez intercepted and translated them. "Admiral, you need to hear this." Sam's voice came through urgently. "The Zarkathi Dominion is having problems at home. Multiple species are rebelling. They saw footage of our resistance and decided to fight back against their own oppressors. The Dominion is calling their fleets back to deal with internal revolts." Lisa Crawford processed this information quickly. "Broadcast it. Make sure every Zarkathi ship hears that message. Let them know their empire is crumbling." Quote, Sam did exactly that, hacking into the enemy communication network and amplifying the distress signals. Every Zarkathi commander heard the reports of rebellion spreading across the Dominion. Conquered worlds were rising up. The empire that had seemed eternal was fracturing. The enemy fleet hesitated. Their orders had been to conquer Earth. But now, their home territory needed them. Supreme Commander Velthar's flagship, which had been coordinating the assault, suddenly broke formation and began retreating. Other Zarkathi ships followed. Not all of them. Some commanders were determined to finish what they started. But enough retreated that the remaining ships found themselves outnumbered. The battle's momentum had shifted decisively. On Mars, Ben Carter watched through his rifle scope as Zarkathi troops began evacuating their positions. Dropships descended from orbit to pick up ground forces. The aliens were leaving, pulling back in confusion and disarray. "Don't let up," Ben ordered his Marines. "Hit them while they're retreating. Make sure they remember what happens when you invade human territory." 7. Sign the Macket. Don't let up. B. The Marines launched one final assault on the withdrawing forces. It wasn't about killing more enemies. It was about sending a message. Earth's defenders would fight to the very last moment. They would never accept defeat. In Earth orbit, the final Zarkathi ships were either destroyed or fleeing. The ESS Defiance, barely functional, remained on station. Jake Mitchell looked at his exhausted crew and felt overwhelming pride. They had done the impossible. "All human vessels, cease fire," Admiral Crawford's voice came through. "The enemy is retreating. We've won. Earth is secure." The words felt unreal. For months they had been fighting and dying, never quite believing they could actually win. But now it was over. The Zarkathi were gone. Earth still stood. The cost had been terrible. Nearly half the human fleet was destroyed. Orbital stations were wrecked. 3 cities had been heavily damaged by ground fighting. Casualties numbered in the hundreds of thousands. It would take years, maybe decades, to fully recover, but they had survived. More than that, they had proven something important to the galaxy. Humanity would not be conquered. They would not submit to threats. They would fight with intelligence, courage, and relentless determination against any enemy, no matter how powerful. 3 days after the battle ended, Admiral Lisa Crawford addressed the survivors in a broadcast that reached every human settlement from Earth to the Jupiter colonies. "We have won a great victory," Lisa began. "But it came at a terrible price. We lost friends, family members, comrades in arms. We lost ships we spent years building and cities we spent centuries creating. The scars of this war will remain with us for a long time." She paused, her expression serious but proud. But we also gained something invaluable. We learned what humanity is truly capable of when faced with extinction. We learned that our greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our refusal to give up. It's our ability to adapt, to innovate, to find solutions where none seem to exist. It's our willingness to sacrifice ourselves for those we love. Jake Mitchell watched the broadcast from the Defiance. His crew, reduced to less than half its original numbers, stood with him. They were dirty, exhausted, and wounded, but they were alive. "The war is over," Lisa continued. "The Zarkathi Dominion is collapsing under the weight of rebellion." The footage of our resistance spread across their empire. Other species saw that it was possible to fight back and win. They saw humans refusing to surrender, even against impossible odds. And they decided they could do the same. She smiled slightly. "We didn't just defend Earth. We started something bigger. The age of the Dominion is ending. A new era is beginning. One where species can be free from oppression. And humanity will play a part in that future." The broadcast ended. Work began immediately on rebuilding what was lost. Engineers started repairs on damaged ships and stations. Medical teams cared for the wounded. Families mourned their dead, while also celebrating survival. In the following weeks, something remarkable happened. Ships began arriving from other species, former subjects of the Zarkathi Dominion. They came seeking alliance with humanity. They wanted to learn how humans had won. They wanted to trade technology and form defense pacts. Dr. Laura Bennett led teams that shared human innovations with these new allies. In return, Earth gained access to technologies they had never imagined: hyperspace travel, advanced medicine, energy systems far beyond anything humans had developed. The exchange of knowledge accelerated human advancement by decades. Jake Mitchell was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's rebuilt defense fleet. His first task was to oversee construction of a new generation of warships that incorporated both human and alien technology. The new fleet would be stronger than anything Earth had fielded before. Sam Rodriguez became the head of Earth's Cybersecurity and Electronic Warfare Division. His skills, once used for pranks and minor crimes, now protected humanity from threats both external and internal. He built systems that ensured no enemy could hack human networks the way he had hacked theirs. Ben Carter received command of the Marine Corps and began training new soldiers in the tactics that had proven effective against the Zarkathi. His methods emphasized flexibility, creativity, and the courage to fight against superior forces. The Marines became known throughout the galaxy as some of the finest soldiers anywhere. Admiral Lisa Crawford was elected to head the new United Earth Council, a government body that coordinated humanity's expansion into space. Under her leadership, humans established colonies on a dozen new worlds and created alliances with 20 different species. The war had changed everything. Before the Zarkathi arrived, humanity had been cautiously exploring their own solar system, uncertain of their place in the universe. Now they were a major power, respected, and sometimes feared by other species. But humans hadn't forgotten the lessons of the war. They didn't seek to conquer or dominate. Instead, they built alliances based on mutual respect and shared values. They helped liberate species still under Dominion control. They shared their knowledge freely with those who wanted to learn. The Zarkathi Dominion continued to collapse. Within 5 years, it had fragmented into dozens of smaller states. Some made peace with their former subjects. Others fought until they were destroyed. The age of easy conquest was over. Earth became a symbol throughout the galaxy. When species faced oppression, they remembered how humanity had fought against impossible odds and won. The phrase, human tenacity, entered multiple languages. It meant the refusal to accept defeat, regardless of circumstances. Years later, Jake Mitchell stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiant Hope, a warship that combined the best of human and alien engineering. He was escorting a diplomatic mission to a newly liberated world. As he looked at the stars, He thought about how far humanity had come. They had been challenged by the Galactic Fleet. They had faced overwhelming force with courage and intelligence. They had endured losses that would have broken lesser civilizations. But they had survived and thrived because of one simple truth. Humanity never gave up. When pushed to the edge, they fought back with relentless fury. That fury had saved Earth. It had inspired a galaxy, and it would carry humanity to whatever challenges lay ahead among the stars. Was humanity's last stand. The Zarkathi attacked in waves, testing Earth's defenses before committing fully. They targeted the Vengeance first, recognizing it as the most dangerous human vessel. 20 enemy ships focused their fire on Captain Phillips's ship. The Vengeance fought magnificently, but even it couldn't withstand such concentrated assault. Its shields failed. Its armor was breached in multiple locations. Fires broke out across the ship. "Abandon ship," Matt Phillips ordered. "All hands to escape pods." But before the crew could evacuate, Lieutenant Megan Brooks had an idea. "Captain, what if we overload the reactor? We're going to lose the ship anyway. We could take some of them with us." Matt looked at his weapons officer. She was young, brilliant, and brave, too brave for her own good. "Evacuate the crew first," he said. "I'll stay and set the overload." "With respect, Captain, you're too important to lose," Megan replied. "I can do this." System. We regroup and request additional forces from the Dominion. The Zarkathi fleet withdrew, leaving Earth's orbital space for the first time in weeks. Human defenders watched them go, exhausted but victorious. They had won this battle, though the war was far from over. Admiral Crawford addressed the fleet from her command center. "Well done, everyone. We've proven that Earth can defend itself. But stay alert. They'll be back. And next time they'll bring more ships. Use this time to repair, rearm, and prepare. We're not done fighting yet." Jake Mitchell felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They had survived another day. More than that, they had proven humans could win. The Zarkathi were no longer invincible in their eyes. As enemy soldiers rushed toward their position. 30 seconds, Jake said, watching the upload progress. The door exploded inward. Zarkathi soldiers poured in, firing their energy weapons. Kate was hit in the shoulder, her armor barely absorbing the blast. Turner threw a grenade, and the explosion bought them a few more seconds. 10 seconds, Jake said. More enemies came. Turner fell, shot, multiple times. He wasn't dead but couldn't fight anymore. Jake and Kate fired desperately, trying to hold them back. "Upload complete," Jake shouted. He grabbed Turner, and they ran. Kate covered their retreat, firing behind them as they moved. They barely made it back to the shuttle. As they launched, Zarkathi fighters began pursuing them. The Defiance appeared, firing at the enemies and giving the shuttle cover to escape. Jake's team had suffered casualties, but they had succeeded. The virus was in the Zarkathi command network. Now, they would see if it worked. As the first day of battle ended, both sides pulled back to regroup. The Zarkathi had won tactically. They controlled near-Earth space and had destroyed most of the defense platforms, but they had also lost 6 ships and thousands of soldiers. The cost was far higher than they had anticipated. On the bridge of the Defiance, Jake looked at the casualty reports. The numbers made him sick. But Earth still stood. The planet hadn't fallen, and humans were still fighting. Admiral Crawford appeared on his screen. She looked exhausted but determined. "They're calling for reinforcements," she said. "Our intelligence intercepted their communications. They didn't expect this level of resistance." Jake nodded slowly. "Good. Let them bring more ships. We'll just have more targets." It was bravado, but it was necessary. The crew needed to believe they could win. More importantly, the Zarkathi needed to believe that humans would never stop fighting. Jake looked at his crew. They were scared, but they were also angry. Good. Anger could be useful if directed properly. Lieutenant Morrison, Start analyzing those ships. Look for weak points, power signatures, anything unusual. Dan, keep trying to establish communication. Let's see if anyone in that fleet is willing to talk before the shooting starts. The crew got to work. Jake stood at the viewport, staring at the alien vessels. Somewhere on one of those ships was a commander who thought Earth would be easy to conquer. That commander was about to learn something important about humanity. They were about to learn that humans didn't bow easily to threats. The next 48 hours would determine everything.